Thank you. Our fourth speaker is David Metcalfe from Verdantix, CEO of Verdantix. He doesn't need much introduction to you guys. We regularly turn to him as a panelist and as a speaker. We like him because he's very versatile on corporate sustainability strategies, and I believe he's going to talk to you about what drivers he regards as impacting supply chain strategies and where he is seeing activity in the market. David.
Thanks, Jim, for the introduction. So, good evening. Ramon, I thought that was a wonderful statement in the face of the data that we have saying that we're all looking at scorecards right now. So, I'm not being relied on to stir controversy this evening. So what I'm going to talk about is just a few things in terms of how hard it is going to be to change supply chains for sustainability reasons. So I think that's the first thing I'd like to talk about. And then secondly, what are some of the things that we see affecting thinking on supply chains that are coming from the sustainability arena. But I'm going to spend most of my time on the final section, talking actually more around where we're seeing market activity, where are people investing their time. So on that first point, it's hard. Let's just spend a little bit of time thinking about supply chains. Many of them are very long, with multiple tiers of suppliers. There tend to be a lot of interdependencies as well, as the earthquake in Japan, I think, showed the ripple effect for supply chains around the world. They're also very complex. Many of them are governed by commercial contracts that have been in place for a long time and may actually have to last a long time because of the interdependencies. And they're also very price sensitive. Now, what that means is that they're going to be very hard to change. It's difficult, it's tough, and if you go and survey 100 supply chain directors, and I imagine there are not too many of them here tonight, they would rather put their head below the parapet than volunteer for a sustainability transformation project for the supply chain, probably because they value their weekends. But change is on the way. So what we see happening is much more focus on the energy intensity of supply chains. Now, of course, we already see that with oil prices and the trucking lobby, for instance, in the UK. That is just one manifestation of issues around, I wouldn't say just sustainability, but actually commodity prices. There are also issues creeping in, and especially from next year, on carbon policy. So let's not forget next year, January, all aviation, every flight that lands in or departs from an EU airport will be subject to the first carbon tax, effectively, on those flights. And there are discussions as well in terms of the maritime industry. How will they be regulated, and how will they be forced to account for emissions from container vessels, for instance? So I believe the direction on this is clear, and that is adding to the types of things that ASDA would be concerned about in terms of reputational damage. But at the same time, let's not over-egg the pudding on this, because there are examples of firms where they are brought to account. For instance, Primark last year, where, actually people who shop there didn't seem to be too concerned about some of the media coverage regarding their supply chain issues. So I think that goes to the point which is very well made by Ramon. Are we actually going to change supply chains to achieve some sort of competitive advantage? Because if your customers don't really care about sustainability, why should you invest in the changes? So let me wrap up with some of the hot topics that we see out there at the moment. Definitely, everyone has their eye on commodity price inflation. In a way, that is the most powerful metric from an economic point of view that maps to sustainability. We would definitely agree that life cycle assessment is one of the emerging areas. There's a lot of investment going into software firms that have an established reputation in this space, such as PE International. And we see that as a crucial first step to just provide the information required. Sustainability scorecards. There is activity happening there, again from an information gathering point of view, but we don't really see it as a significant change agent. It's more a case of housekeeping. Another area of activity that we see in firms that have complex supply chains would actually be contingency planning. So that may be medium term or long term, but is definitely tied in with growing resource scarcity issues, especially in sectors like food and beverage. One of the big drivers that is emerging, it may be hard to see, is actually in public sector procurement. So these RFP requests are out in the public domain. And so, for instance, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, when it last tendered for its global telecoms contract, you can imagine a very big contract, they actually weighted 15% of the response on energy, carbon, and water, and included in that the ability to articulate how much of those resources would be required to deliver the contract. So we see that as a major engine of growth. And for people who are maybe skeptical about what the US federal government is doing, we also see a lot of activity there from an executive order that Obama signed in October 2009, which is just now coming to fruition. A few final points before I wrap up here. The big challenge is moving from, I think, the visions, the 2020 type goals that the CEO has set to persuading senior management that they should actually implement them. So it's a common issue that we see across many firms. We are also seeing much more engagement in emerging markets, largely because of the manufacturing base for many firms stretches out to those locations, or else they're sourcing agricultural commodities. And so let me wrap up just with a couple of key points. We believe that one of the issues which will come home to roost in the next couple of years is what we call sustainability leakage. And what we mean by that is that there's a risk that today companies are saying supply chains are very hard to change. It's expensive, it's also risky. So we would rather foist the changes onto our suppliers in lacking collaboration and lacking support. And that's effectively saying we don't want to make operational changes and you will. So that's a risk that's growing in some of the strategies that we see today. Secondly, supply chain directors not being engaged would seem to be a major problem. And we also feel that the CapEx implications of some of the changes required, when you start talking about investing in new logistics, for instance, when you think about the entire distribution chain, have not really been confronted yet. And like any CapEx decisions, they have to fight for funding with other plans. So for all of these reasons, you can see many factors building up that are likely to make this a problematic area, but certainly a very interesting one. Thank you very much.